If you're considering buying Escape from Tarkov, but you're concerned about being new to PC or just new to using mouse and keyboard as an input for shooter games, well, you're in the right place. My name is Squirrel, and I come from a long background of playing FPS games on controller, and Escape from Tarkov was my first game on mouse and keyboard. I see a lot of people saying that Tarkov is too difficult of a game to learn mouse and keyboard on, or too hardcore to be your first PC game, and I'm here to tell you that simply isn't true. Well, at least it may not be true. I can only speak from my personal experience, and it certainly won't be a match for everyone, but I hope this video can break down the pros and cons of buying Tarkov as a new PC player or someone that's new to mouse and key, and help you decide if you fall in the category that I did, one where Escape from Tarkov is the perfect game to learn mouse and keyboard on. Before we get deep into it, I'm going to lay out a few assumptions that I'm going to make in this video that will be important context for the recommendations that I make. First is that you have watched Escape from Tarkov gameplay, streams, and or reviews of the game, and you know from this experience that you're interested in the game. Escape from Tarkov is by no means an easy game, especially if you're new to the FPS genre. However, if you have experience in the genre and are prepared for the struggle, it may still be a good game for people who are new to mouse and key input. If you haven't watched a lot of Escape from Tarkov or watched any reviews, I recommend you do that just so that you can get a taste of what the game is like and know if it's something that you'd be interested in. And if you wanted to, you could drop by my live streams on Twitch and say hey and check out some gameplay there. The second is that you understand the specs needed to run the game and that you know it'll run well on your machine. I don't want to recommend that someone get a game only for them to find out it won't run well on their PC. I'm not an expert on PCs, but most people agree that a good CPU and high RAM are key to running Tarkov well. My PC personally runs Tarkov very well. I'll post my specs in the description in case it helps, but ultimately it will be up to you to find out if you can run the game. And finally, I'm going to assume that you are ultimately going to make the decision on your own. Everyone is different, and just because this game is a great fit for one person, it doesn't mean it will be for everyone. This video is going to focus on if it's a good game to learn mouse and keyboard on, but there are a lot of other factors that play into if you'll enjoy the game. I can tell you from my experience with Escape from Tarkov, but it is by no means a guarantee that it will be your experience with the game. Just be sure you are content with your research on the game. Feel free to ask me questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to give advice. So can you be successful in Escape from Tarkov if you have no prior experience on mouse and keyboard or PC only games? There are a few reasons that it was the perfect game for me to learn on. The first is movement speed and movement mechanics. Let me explain. While some games require you to learn advanced movement to realistically compete against experienced players, Tarkov's movement system is much simpler. The absolute best of the best players will occasionally move in a way that blows your mind, but the average player can compete by just learning a couple of relatively simple movement mechanics, and even just by using the basic WASD keys and shift to move from cover to cover. I'm going to be working on some tips videos in the future that cover these mechanics, so subscribe if you want to check those out, but for the purposes of this video, just know that a regular player can play Escape from Tarkov without having to string together 20 bunny hops, run on walls, slide cancel around corners while using equipment, power slide 100 meters, or any of those types of crazy things that you might see in other more fast-paced FPS games. So that is movement mechanics, but I also mentioned movement speed. Well, that comes into play in a few ways. One, since the movement speed in general is a little slower, you have a little more time than you have in other games to get your wits about you in a fight. Even if you come across aggressive players, they are somewhat limited by the player movement speed and general pacing of the game and time to kill, which can cause them to slow down or not be able to push if you position well and can help you compete. We'll get into a more detailed discussion on pacing in a minute, but first let's take a look at how movement speed helps you while learning how to aim with a mouse. One of the most foundational pieces of learning to aim is called tracking. The faster and more complex movement is in a game, the more difficult it is to track your targets. PC Gamer defines tracking as keeping your crosshair stuck on a target at all times and following them as they move. Ron Rambo Kim, professional gamer and aim coach, says that there are 6 major aiming motions with a mouse. I'll link to his video in the description, but here are the categories that he lists: micro, flicking, swiping, smoothing, tracking, and vertical. Some games require you to excel at all of these to compete, but with Tarkov, you can focus on just like 3 to 4 of them first and still be successful at the game without getting really good at tracking and vertical. Of course, these skills will be important over time if you're interested in being very good on mouse and keyboard, but my point is that you can have fun and be successful without immediately needing to track jumping, flying, small characters moving at the speed of light. The tracking required in Tarkov is simply just a little bit easier than many other FPS games, and anyone can win a fight with one headshot on an unsuspecting victim. Alright, so learning to aim with a mouse in Tarkov isn't too bad, but what about keybinds? Escape from Tarkov utilizes a huge range of keys on your keyboard, significantly more than many other FPS games. But I don't really see this as a disadvantage when it comes to learning. First, the speed at which Tarkov is played often gives you more time to think about what you need to press than in other games. When I was first playing Call of Duty on mouse and keyboard, for example, I found myself much more commonly panic clicking or misclicking on the wrong key because the speed and pace at which the game was played required you to move very quickly. Tarkov is one of the hardest games you'll ever play for a lot of reasons, but the pace certainly makes some things easier. In my opinion, you're more likely in Tarkov to get a little bit of time to look down at your keyboard if you need to than you would in other games. The next benefit of the complex keybind system to me is that you become a master of the keyboard. If you can learn to play Escape from Tarkov on mouse and keyboard, I believe that you can play any game on this input. The combination of pacing that gives you a little bit more time to think about what key you're pressing, with the fact that you need to learn how to utilize so much of your keyboard, is a recipe for really mastering the input. Lastly, the theme throughout this video that ties it all together is the pacing. I believe that Escape from Tarkov is unique in this respect. Many other games either force you into fast-paced constant engagements or make finding engagements and improving your fighting skills difficult. Sure, you're going to sometimes get rushed off spawn and insta-killed, and the game is going to feel unbelievably confusing and overwhelming at times. By the way, I have a short guide that can help you with guns and loot at the very beginning of the game. If you do try out Tarkov, I recommend watching it. It's under 5 minutes and it will help you at least wrap your head around good early guns and ammo and where to find some basic loot that you will need. Anyway, the game will be hard at first, but once you get your feet under you, you'll learn that you actually have a lot of control over its difficulty. For example, in Escape from Tarkov, you have a lot of control over whether you push PvP or avoid fights and focus on other things. Once you start to learn things like spawns and common rotations, high value loot areas, stuff like that, you can master moving through the map quietly or simply stay to the outskirts. You can implement techniques like literally hiding for 10 minutes until the raid cools down and then traverse much more safely. You can go into less populated night raids and work in the shadows. You have the ability to choose less frequented PvP maps or avoid maps and areas with the most difficult AI. You can focus on questing or finding items for your hideout, and you even have a scav run available to you, which is basically just a side character with a randomly generated and totally free loadout. You can utilize this character every so often as a completely free way to load into any map and explore and loot, and you get to keep everything that you get out with for your main character. In the same respect that you can take measures to avoid fights, it's extremely easy to push them too. It won't take you long at all to learn which maps and POIs have the most PvP, and you can rush there to get almost guaranteed fights with good players. This balance in the game really allows you to sort of choose your own difficulty and progress and learn at your own pace. It's important to note that I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying Tarkov is easy. It isn't. I'm not saying that you can just coast through the quest line by doing XYZ or whatever. I'm saying that it's very possible to enjoy the game in your own way and at your own pace, and that Tarkov has a certain uniqueness to it in how it offers these options to you. Overall, I think Escape from Tarkov is the best game that I could have learned mouse and keyboard on, and I think there are probably other people out there who are like me. For example, you might be experienced in the FPS genre, but just a little bit worried about the transition to mouse and keyboard on such a difficult game. I think if this game is a good fit for you and the only thing holding you back is your input, you may want to consider just taking the plunge. Tarkov is one of the most rewarding games I've ever played, but it's also one of the most difficult and challenging games I've ever played. For that reason, it might not be for everyone, but who knows, it might be right for you. If you decide to give Tarkov a try, subscribe to the channel so you can catch more videos, or come ask a question on Twitch when I'm live. I'd love to see you there. Links in the description.